23 years ago today, I was born on Thanksgiving Day. But more importantly to me, I was born on the first annual of WWF Survivor Series.
He has more videos than subscribers. He's one of the few on here without a PayPal. This isn't work. He's simply here to entertain. 11 years in a row. It's the Paul Michael DB show. And welcome to the third PMDB audio video of 2020, where it's just basically a slideshow and I flap my gums for half an hour or so. Today we're going to talk about fake fights, professional wrestling, sports entertainment, junk, whatever you want to call it. I got WWE Network caught my attention last month when I realized Brock Lesnar was going to be entering number one in the Royal Rumble. I'm still a bit of a Brock Lesnar mark, so I enabled for the first time ever my free trial of the WWE Network. It's been going for 6 years now, and this is the first time I've had it in my life, as my interest in wrestling has really declined since about 2005. And recently I've been watching a show from every year. I'm at 2018 now. I'm currently watching on mute a matchup. Well, it's just finished between, I thought it was finished there. False finish, was it? Between Seth Rollins and the guy, Elias, at Money in the Bank 2018. I've never seen this show before. I don't think actually, that's a lie. I did watch one Money in the Bank pay-per-view, but that was with my cousin. I didn't go out my way. My cousin's younger than me. I didn't go out my way to watch a Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So I guess this is the first time I've watched one by choice. And when I seen it was 4 hours long, I was almost tapping out right there and then. It's like, oh God. And what I do is I don't actually just sit there in a chair and watch everything that goes on in these pay-per-views. Sometimes I actually turn the screen off because it's just too much and I want to do other things. But I just leave it playing and then I'll come back to it. And if anything grabs my eye, I'll maybe unmute it and watch some of the match or some of the segment. This is what I do. So it's just like sort of on in the background. So, but by goodness, from about 2007 onwards, the pay-per-views are like an endurance test. Even when they're on in the background, they are an endurance test. So I'm sitting here. There will be gaps now and again. I've got my cup of tea. I could edit that parts out, but it's such a ficker about. Yesterday, for example, I edit a lot sometimes, but I mean, I put together this Halloween video yesterday on my main channel, Paul Michael DB. 7 minutes long it was, and it took me about 5 hours to upload it to YouTube. It's like, so yes, I do get a bit lazy when it comes to editing and editing little parts out, but please forgive me, as it takes up so much time. And no one's going to watch. Literally, no one will watch this. Maybe some people will watch on BitChute when I upload it there as well. My videos, the PMDB video series, franchise, whatever you want to call it, is available both on YouTube and BitChute. Over here on YouTube, I have free channels. This is the one no one's heard of. And I've decided to put all my audio type videos here. And most of my wrestling related videos will go here too because, well, the people that do enjoy my videos, some of them don't really care too much for wrestling, and I can't blame them. Anyways, I'm rambling on here. So, as I've been saying, I've been doing this, making the most out of this free trial of the WWE Network, which I have kept on. It is very impressive, the WWE Network, and I've decided to keep it on until at least after WrestleMania. Then I maybe get rid of it, but I'm milking it. And I've been watching a show year by year, and I thought I'd make a video on ranking the best and worst wrestling eras in my lifetime. So a little bit of background about me. I put a wee clip at the start of this video from 2010. I was actually born on the first ever Survivor Series, so as soon as I entered this life, I already had a wrestling connection. And then in 1991, I finally got into the World Wrestling Federation, right in time for the steroid scandal. It was the beginning of the end of the golden age of wrestling. But I fell in love with wrestling through those old WWF tapes. You know, my favorites were Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. And then later on, I would, grow up to really appreciate Jake the Snake Roberts and the Macho Man Randy Savage. I would grow up with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, loved their matches, and arguably became a bigger fan when Stone Cold Steve Austin took off. Um, so in this video, also, even when my decline in wrestling, like my interest started declining following the Attitude Era, really, I did actually attend a WrestleMania. I forgot to mention that. I attended one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, WrestleMania 25, but it did have, and I rewatched this. I actually sat. This is one of the matches, one of the moments I actually sat and rewatched, give it my full attention, was the match between Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25, which I was in attendance for, and it was magic as far as wrestling goes. Definitely one of the best matches ever and one of the worst WrestleManias ever. Trust me, WrestleMania 25 sucked for the most part. It was an endurance test, and I was there in my Austin 316 top. There is a wee video. I've shared it before. I'm not going to share it again in this video. Is a year before I joined YouTube in 2009, I did record a couple of videos at WrestleMania of me shouting like a maniac for Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then that was actually the last wrestling show I attended, because before I attended WrestleMania, the shows I had went to in my area, Aberdeen, the WWE live events, I thought sucked. I went to one in 2003. All I can remember is John Cena coming out with a camera and calling everybody in Aberdeen ugly. And then I remember Brock Lesnar F5 in the Big Show. I think a fan tried to enter the ring at one point and the referee took him out, Mike Chioda. Then I attended by myself. This is how popular wrestling was by 2004 here, anyways. I attended a wrestling show by myself. I remember that was when Bradshaw turned heel and John Cena came out wearing a kilt. And then I attended couple of shows in 2005, live events. One had Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was good to see him. I've seen a Stone Cold Stunner in person, so that's nice. I think I attended one in 2006, but the only pay-per-view. I mean, I live in Scotland, so I've got an excuse why I haven't attended many pay-per-views overseas in America. I've only been to America 4 times. One of the times was to see WrestleMania. I was such a, even when my interest in wrestling was declining, I was such a mark still and a WWE defender, you know. I was part of the WWE universe. I really hate that term. What's wrong with just calling us fans? When they came up with that term WWE universe, it just sounds so lame. Um. Anyways, it's good to escape the WWE bubble from time to time. Anyways, so I hadn't attended a WWE show since WrestleMania, but I was kind of bullied into attending this NXT show in 2017. I'll put a picture in here somewhere. Me with a funny face on, action shot, posing outside with my Austin 316 top I wore at WrestleMania outside the NXT ring. Me and my cousin, I think I can speak for both of us. We're both bored during the show. I thought it was bloody awful. And when I hear the small, very niche wrestling crowd rave about how great NXT is, I don't get it because it's just all flippity flip flop moves with not much characters going on, not much points to the fake fights. It's just without characters and without someone like extraordinary like Shawn Michaels or Bret Hart, wrestling is so boring. I'm sorry. It's like I've never gone into UFC either. I'll never get the enjoyment people get out of people watching UFC fighters, beat the living hell out of each other. I don't, and I've been to a UFC show before too. I was bullied into going to one of them too for a stag do type of day. And I ended up at a UFC show, which, to be fair, was even though I don't get enjoyment out of watching UFC fighters, bash each other. Uh, it was a hell of a lot more enjoyable and better atmosphere than NXT. Um, I just I thought NXT was atrocious when I've watched a few NXT shows and I don't understand it. Why some of the wrestling fans today that are in this Dave Meltzer bubble, I call it, just love that. I don't understand it. And wrestling's been in my life for nearly 30 years now. Even though my interest in it have declined, I've checked it out now and again because I'm still a bit of a Brock Lesnar mark. I think when John Cena called him the greatest of all time, he's not far off it, in my opinion. So I'm in agreement with John. There's only a couple of wrestlers I can think of that are better than Brock Lesnar overall at performing these fake fights. But Brock Lesnar's definitely up there. I would put him in the top three of all time, definitely. So anyway, let's get on with what I find is the best and worst periods of wrestling. As I sip my tea here, it's going stone cold, my tea. I'm flapping my gums here. And of course, that's how Stone Cold Steve Austin apparently got his name. His girlfriend or wife at the time said to him way back, "You better drink your tea, Steve, or it's going to go stone cold." And that's how he got his name. So I'm going to cover the eras of wrestling. I'm going to cover is the eras, of my lifetime. It'd be pointless talking about something that happened in the Bruno Sammartino era or the 1970s or even the early to mid 80s because, well, I wasn't even alive. I'm not that old yet. I'm not quite a dinosaur yet. I might be as old as the Survivor Series, but I'm not quite a dinosaur yet. I'm going to talk about the golden age of wrestling because I did watch a lot of those tapes when I was a kid, and that's the stuff that got me into wrestling in the first place. And I caught the bitter end of the golden age when I first got into wrestling. Um, and then, of course, I grew up with the next generation, which gets mocked quite a lot these days by the Dave Meltzer, Mark fans. The Attitude Era, which for some reason gets mocked by the Dave Meltzer, Mark fans. And then there was the John Cena era that lasted for 10 years too long, in my opinion. I was never. We'll get on to John Cena soon. And now there's this era, I don't know what you would call it, the Daniel Bryan slash Becky Lynch slash NXT slash AEW era of wrestling. So I'm going to cover 5 eras of wrestling and rank them best to worst. I'll save the very best of wrestling, the worst of wrestling at the end of this video. So to start off with, where do you go? What era would I call the best ever? And it's a close one. But I'm going to go with the golden age of wrestling from 1985 to 1992. Hulk Hogan without doubt, without question, one of the greatest ever. Maybe the greatest ever. Um, no one could sell like him. Larger than life character. He actually could perform. He gets, Dave Meltzer gave his match with Andre at WrestleMania 3 -2 stars or something like that, something ridiculous like that. Hulk Hogan could actually perform the moves better than a lot of these, you know, Dave Meltzer Mark favorites out there, in my opinion. And he told a better story than a lot of the 5 star wrestlers out there, the apparent 5 star ones. But it wasn't just about Hogan. There were so many great characters in the golden age of wrestling. That's what drew me into wrestling, was the characters. There was a video that came on before one of the very first wrestling tape I watched, the Survivor Series '88. And before it, on came this promotional video talking about all the wrestling you can get. And I was just drawn in by the characters: Demolition, Andre the Giant, Piper, Warrior, Jake the Snake Roberts, Savage. And so it had a great mix of great characters, and it had your, Bret Hart's in there and your Shawn Michaels that could pull off these, awesome matches too. And it just had a really great mix. And it was very popular time to be a wrestling fan. In my lifetime, anyways, there's been two genuine mainstream eras of wrestling, and that is the Golden Age of Wrestling and the Attitude Era, bar none. And the Attitude Era was very close to getting #1 spot, but I feel overall the Golden Age, it lasted longer and it had more, it had Hogan, Warrior, Savage, Jake, Andre, Piper, Mr. Perfect, Ravishing, Rick Rude. The list goes on. So many great tag teams too: Demolition, the Hart Foundation, the Rockers, the Brainbusters, Legion of Doom later on, the Road Warriors. So to me, overall, the golden age of wrestling, it lasted longer. It was the foundation of what the WWE would later become. And, the WrestleMania arrived during this period, Survivor Series, SummerSlam, the Royal Rumble match concept. It didn't have Raw yet, but it had some fun weekly shows like Prime Time and great events, one-off shows like Saturday Night's Main Events and stuff like that. And Attitude Era is my #2 pick in the greatest eras, or in my ranking list. But see, I think one of the main issues with the Attitude Era is Triple H. I'm just going to be honest. I think Triple H is one of the main reasons why wrestling has become so bad today. He's very overrated. When you do an endurance test watching a show year by year, you will get sick of seeing Triple H, especially if you do a WrestleMania marathon, which I've done many times, too many times in my lifetime, to be honest. And I'm so sick of seeing Triple H. He's so overrated, and he's not that damn good. So for me, Triple H brings down the Attitude Era. And overall, the golden age of wrestling had more stars overall, more larger than life characters. However, the Attitude Era did have Stone Cold Steve Austin, whom, in my opinion, is the greatest wrestler of all time. So he really elevates that era. And without him, too, it still would be the second best, because the eras following these two golden periods of wrestling, are, low, very low in comparison to these two. But Steve Austin was so damn good that just his presence alone almost makes the Attitude Era the greatest period of wrestling ever. And that's how good Steve was. He had all these great characters in the golden age of wrestling. but Steve Austin just himself almost brings his era of wrestling up to it being the very best in my opinion. As I sip my Stone Cold tea again. So number one, the golden age of wrestling. And number two, I'm going to go with the Attitude Era. And I'm a Vince Russo mark. I'll just say I'm a Vince Russo guy. And I think the Attitude Era worked best when he was writing the shows, or at least helping to write the shows. So, I've mentioned Steve Austin. I think I thought my video audio messed up there. So I've mentioned Steve Austin. Also, there was a guy named The Rock there you might have heard of. Steve Austin. See, Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, and The Rock, without a doubt, the three biggest wrestling stars in my lifetime. Three larger than life personas. And, the Attitude Era also had Mick Foley performing all those ridiculous stunts. The stuntman and the Attitude Era. It had many great characters too. And everybody on the show had a purpose. Everyone on the show had a purpose. And there was intrigue to their matches and to watching the fake fights. Because once you realize that it's all fake as hell, then you need something other than just in my opinion, a Dave Meltzer 5-star flippity flip flop move spot fest of a match to draw in the mainstream audience. You need characters. You need larger than life stars. So the Attitude Era, it was highly entertaining. A little bit too much Triple H. Triple H is a B plus player. Triple H should have never. He really has outstayed his welcome. I really believe because he's in charge of a lot of the behind the scenes now. And I've already touched on those NXT shows a little bit. That's his world, right? It's his creation. I think it sucks. And I think he's one of the reasons why wrestling is in the mess that it's in. But enough about Triple H. I won't mention him again, I promise. But yeah, definitely the Attitude Era and Stone Cold Steve Austin, in my opinion, really elevated that Attitude Era even more. Is the feud with Austin McMahon was the best wrestling storyline ever, best feud in wrestling ever. And it does come close to being my number one spot as far as eras of wrestling go. Now, in third place, this is difficult. I'm going to have to go with the Next Generation, I'm sorry. And the Next Generation had some major problems. Take out Owen Hart, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels, and it's quite poor show. But in a weird sort of way, it's went up. The Next Generation era from 1993 to 1997 has went up because today's wrestling, since the Attitude Era, has been so bad that the Next Generation, in my opinion, went up. So in third place, I'm going to go with the Next Generation. Say what you like about it. Give me a Raw 993 episode that was like an hour, not even an hour, I think, or it was either between an hour and half an hour, I can't remember. Give me one of those episodes over a 3-hour friggin' Raw any day. And the 3 hours of Raw we get today is so dire. There's no characters. There's just non-stop wrestling. But there's nothing of interest about these shows. Poorly written, bland as hell, 50-50 booking. It's so basic. It's like to put no effort into today's shows. So, in third place by default for me is the Next Generation. Now, what is worse? Was it the John Cena 10-year shoved down your throat era? Or was it today's reality era where it's basically run by marks? I'm gonna have to go fourth place John Cena era, and I'm not. I couldn't stand John Cena when that was beginning the time when my interest in wrestling was dying. I had enough of John Cena. I had seen enough. But it's like today's wrestling is so bad that I get excited when John Cena pops up. That's how bad it's became. I get excited for the guy that drew me away from wrestling when he pops up and like when he comes on the show and Brock Lesnar or Ronda Rousey's not there. He's the guy. He's the best wrestler on the show. A guy that I've never really liked. So I've got to go fourth place to the John Cena era, the PG era, the era after Attitude. From say 2002 to 2013, I'm going to go with that time period because that was the last time he headlined WrestleMania, you know, the last match on the show with The Rock, the twice in a lifetime ordeal. And it was during the end of that time where my interest in checking out wrestling again did peak a little bit with the return of Brock Lesnar, who I mentioned is one of the greatest performers of all time. And people, of course, complain about him being part time. Can you believe? Wow, the product is terrible. If he were full time, it would bring him down a notch because the product is that bad. Why? It's a good thing that he's part time. So fourth place, I've got to go with the John Cena era that I didn't really like. So in fifth place, and in my opinion, by far the worst period of wrestling is today's product. I've never been bored enough to watch one AEW show, so I can't comment on AEW, but I've never been a fan of Cody Rhodes. I recently watched or had on in the background the Royal Rumble matches. I got sick of seeing Cody Rhodes. I got sick of seeing Dolph Ziggler, The Miz. They are not great wrestlers. Yes, they can do the moves nice and polished. Yes, well, The Miz at least is good on the mic. But they don't look like wrestlers. I can't buy into them. They don't look like tough guys. Sami Zayn was one on this Money in the Bank pay-per-view I'm watching at the moment on mute. I wouldn't go across the street to see Sami Zayn. These wrestlers today, in this era of wrestling, our marks are the biggest marks ever. The wrestlers in the ring right now are the biggest marks ever. And they're run by arguably the biggest mark of them all, Triple H. I'm surprised Triple H never ended the streak. I really thought he was going to. The streak was one of the few great things of the post-Attitude era. That angle. And the right person went over, I will say. But I was really surprised that Triple H never put himself. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Triple H again in this video, but it's like impossible not to talk about Triple H a lot because when he arrives in 1996, you will literally just about see him on every single show from 1996 onwards, or at least even if he's not on the show, you'll hear someone talk about Triple H. It's too much. B plus player at best. I think I prefer John Cena over him now. Actually, at least John Cena doesn't. You know, he was shoved down our throats too, but at least John Cena sort of moved away from wrestling and tried to let the new up and coming stars, you know, take the spotlight. Triple H doesn't do that. He's always there or thereabout in the background. Anyways, I'm rambling on about Triple H. But I don't understand what this small and it is a small wrestling crowd that watches now. It hasn't been popular in about 20 years. Wrestling proper mainstream since the Attitude Era. Let's be honest. And the last fantastic WrestleMania, and which was the greatest WrestleMania of all time, was WrestleMania 17. And then following that pay-per-view, wrestling seemed to decline with the dreadful heel turn of Steve Austin. I remember it well. I didn't want to boo Steve Austin. He was the greatest person on the show. Why on earth would I want to boo Steve Austin? So that was the beginning of the end of mainstream wrestling, if you will. That terrible booking decision. And then the new stars following that era just not catching on with the audience. So to recap here as I finish off this ramble of a video, from best to worst, the best period of wrestling, the Golden Age, starring Hulk Hogan. The second best period of wrestling, and almost number one, the Attitude Era, starring The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. In third place by default, because wrestling the last 15 odd years has been so bad, The Next Generation, featuring Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. In fourth place, I've got to go with the John Cena era, an era I didn't particularly like. And in fifth place, by far the worst era of wrestling. And once Brock Lesnar retires, once his part-time appearances is over, I'm done watching today's product completely. I'm already almost there, done watching it. But once Brock Lesnar retires, and rumor has it he's retiring at WrestleMania 36, that's when I tap out of today's WWE product. I'll keep the network around for a while and look at when wrestling used to be great, fantastic. It's good for all that stuff. And I do like some of the behind the scenes documentaries, much more interesting, much more intriguing than what they put on the publicly on stage on the ring. But yeah, I know this might upset a few wrestling fans today, but I'm being honest. Today's wrestling is not very good. Not that damn good.